Well, I'm recording now. Should I zoom out now?
All right.
And then you might go up the
There
top
you go.
and get
Go
across.
up to England there.
Wait a minute. Wait a minute.
Why am I filming this? Why aren't you?
I'm asking
You
questions.
see the name.
You can't multitask? I'm in England.
Wow. That's better.
It's
All right.
it's really blurry, hon.
Well, turn off that light there.
No, it's just
Turn it
blurry.
off.
There we go.
Turn it completely off.
But Grandpa has to sit to tell you where it is.
Uh,
Well, I can see pretty well.
Don't get mad at me if this is poor quality, guys.
well, you want to start out with where you were in the United States, at least, station for basic.
Yeah. Oh, the basics?
Yeah.
That was Fort Rucker, Alabama. Now it's Camp Rucker. Down around Dalton, Alabama. That's where we took our basic training.
All right.
Hey.
And you were drafted, correct?
Yeah.
Out of high school,
Out of high school.
And sent to,
43.
then we went from there to Indiana up here,
Atterbury.
Atterbury.
Look up and talk.
And then we went from there to Boston Harbor up there. That's where we shipped out of. We landed at Glasgow, Scotland. Took 12 days. We got to
Is that on the
Glasgow,
map?
Scotland. And the convoy consisted of 275 ships. And the biggest that went across at that time. And then we went from Scotland.
Pointed.
Well, I was up in here. See, that's line here.
Yeah.
Then we came on down to a camp close to London. And we done some more basic training there for about, I don't know, a month. Then they shipped us to High Wycombe. That was north of London. Up there at a regular army base. And we stayed there and we had shipped there. Now that's where this colored deal happened. You want to know about that?
Yeah.
Well, it was a High Wycombe. And it was a town that everybody went into at night and had beer and celebrated. But one night they shipped in a whole bunch of paratroopers came from over from the United States. They shipped them over
Was
there.
that like the 101st?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
And I think it was the other one though.
I know who you're talking.
Well, they came over there and they was in there with us. And in town that night, they blamed it on the paratroopers, but of course they never did find out who did it. Hung a bunch of colored people
You mean,
who had been over there for a good while on quartermaster. And they got acquainted with all them English girls and
Was quartermaster were they like cooks or
no, that's where all your merchandise is.
merchandise? Okay.
Yeah, that they deliver.
All right.
And so they shipped him over first for that. And they got acquainted with these English girls. And they called themselves the American Indians. And the paratroopers that night hung, I don't know how many exact number, but somebody said around 20 from the buildings even. And then we all got quarantined for 2 weeks so they could go out and pick up all the AWOLs and run down all the people that was guilty, yeah, or trying to, but they never did find nobody. So, High Wycombe there, we stayed there until we had the invasion. But now, You want me to tell about this
Fire.
fire
Yes.
that was down here, right here at the narrowest point. The Germans were going to invade England. And they had all the ships and everything lined up, and they started across. And when they started across, they lit a refinery loose into the channel and set it afire. And it burnt for 7 days and 7 nights
On the water.
on the water. And they don't know how many Germans they killed in that deal. But it was never published because that was inhuman, see. I guess
The
they,
Geneva War Convention.
yeah, something, I don't know. Anyhow, they didn't want it published too much. And the only time I ever seen a deal on it was in the Reader's Digest after the war was over. But anyhow, they don't know how many Germans they burned up, and they burned up all them ships and everything. It stayed right out in there. But see, that's the narrowest point. That's where the Germans was going to go
Yeah,
across.
that's where they thought they were gonna,
Mhm.
even the Allies will pat in.
But then, after our training and everything, and the invasion was right here of France. Well, they sent all the infantry and,
Tell them about fixing your truck. Tell about having your truck, how you preserved it.
Oh yeah, you waterproofed your trucks.
You drove it.
And you put like a gel over all the plugs, you know, and all the coils and everything, and waterproofed them so they'd run underwater a little bit. So we did that. My truck happened to burn up before I got to Southampton here to get on the LST. And when we got down there, they junked my truck and give me another one. And then all the drivers put together, you know, and waterproofed it real quick. Didn't take no time. We got it all waterproofed and drove on the LST right here at Southampton. And then we had a certain time. We landed in France, right here where the invasion was. D+4. That made the 10th of June. The 10th of June, we started out right here, and fierce fighting, awful fierce. Clear on up to St. Lo. Where's the St. Lo at there? But Saint Jean de Day and them little towns, boy, they was just mowed down, liberated, bodies laying everywhere in the street. They'd even be in the roads, you'd run over them as you drove down the road.
Well, tell me when you
But
landed.
you never moved only at night. Huh?
Tell them about when you landed, though.
Well, when you landed, we had to drive off of the ship, and the water came up into my seat, but that's as high as it got. And as it, then we drove up on the bank real quick, got out, took the cosmoline off all the plugs, took cosmoline off of all their spark plugs and all the wires and everything, de-waterproofed it. Jumped back in the truck, and then we started a convoy up over the bank. We went in there about a mile. That's as far as we got that first night. We landed and pulled into a field. And their fields over there was hedgerows. They didn't have no fences, they had hedgerows.
They were thick.
Yeah, and they were thick. You couldn't get through them. Couldn't even hardly drive a tank to them.
That's why they had the little fork prongs.
Yeah.
on them.
So, we got in the field here around it with the hedgerows. And of course the bombing was continuous. That whole night long never did get dark. They was bombing, and our men was shooting flares with their guns, see, machine gun. busting them flares up, and it just made it like daylight all night long. They told us to dig in, but nobody did. I slept underneath an ammunition truck that night. But whenever we got done the next day, then we started moving. We move up into position behind our infantry. We supported the 120th Infantry. We was the 205 Artillery. And so we'd follow them up and shoot over the top of them so they could advance. We had the 105s. And so the next day we didn't go but a mile or two there and got in good position. And then each night we'd try to move up a little bit more. Always move at night. And that's when we went through these towns that was just, they was just mowed down and people laying in the streets and everything. And cows, lots of cows laying out in the fields. Bloated, and stunk. But anyhow, when we got up to St. Lo, that's when the war really started. They was going to send 18,000 planes over, bombers, to make a hole for Patton to take off in the tanks. Well, the first day over, they dropped the bombs on the wrong side, on our side. And they killed their own general, General McNair was his name. And that was their general of the Army Air Force, the 8th Airplane. And
wasn't he the highest decorated death?
Who? General McNair?
Yeah.
He probably was. I don't remember. But anyhow, he died in a foxhole. See, when they came over and bombed on our side, he jumped in a foxhole and it caved in on him and killed him. And so they canceled it. They canceled the whole works. There wasn't but a few thousand planes came over, and then they canceled it. So they brought up replacements from England and every place else they could find them during the night. They brought them up, replaced the infantry that was killed and all that. And the next day they came over, and there were 13,000 bombers came over, and they dropped them in the right spot that day. That made a hole. And then Patton takes off with his tanks through this hole. And he didn't look either direction, he just kept going. Well, that left us in behind him, where we'd have to go and mop up the holes. See, when Germans then they'd circle back and get behind him. Then here we'd come and we'd have to knock them out of the way. So but old Patton just kept going. So our next real battle was Mortain. It's on here someplace, I guess. But anyhow, what happened there, the Germans gathered. They gathered at Mortain, and then here we come along and we had supposed to mop it up. They let Patton right through. Then they came in behind, see? And we was there about 6-7 days. A fierce battle. The infantry was really whittled down, and they'd bring up replacements during the night. And finally, we got to moving again. Then it was pretty smooth sailing until we got up to about close to Paris. Then we run into some more fierce battles, big battles. Then after we got by Paris, we went into Belgium. And we went to Herline, Belgium. It had a great big coal mine there, and we'd all take showers in this coal mine.
Point to Belgium.
And
higher.
right here.
Yeah.
And then we had some fierce fighting around Herline. Then, right down from Herline, what's the name of these towns here?
Loy Tongas.
Well, see, right in there, that's a German line. And that Herline's set just a few miles off of the line.
Is that one Herline right there?
Yeah,
Right there.
Herline.
Yeah, right there. Uh-huh. And see, we went into Germany. And there's a town sitting there that's half in Germany and half in Belgium. And they had a brick, where they made brick, and it's a kiln, and it was round like this table, and you had a tunnel all the way around the inside. We made that our headquarters, and that way we didn't have to dig no foxholes. But a lot of times you'll dig them foxholes, like we dug one up here, one of these spots we was fighting. And that night, while Germans came over, we heard a big thud. We thought, uh-oh, I heard a bomb that didn't go off. We slept in them foxholes, and next morning we got up, and there was an auxiliary tank off of one of their airplanes, you know. It went empty, and they dropped it. It hit just a few feet from our foxhole. But anyhow, when we got up into Germany, that's when we was living in this brick kiln. And it was a town. We could go back and go in them hotels. They'd have beer by the kegs in there. We'd pack them out, and of course we didn't have no ice or nothing, but we'd drink the beer. Then, when we was there, we'd catch chickens and turkeys or something, you know, animals, and put them on a stick and roast them during the daytime. And we ate pretty good right in there. But anyhow, that's when I got appendicitis. They moved us down to the Rural River. And we was going to cross the Rural River, and here comes the Germans again, and they bombed our tanks.
Well, tell them about your operation.
And when the tanks, when they hit them tanks, here comes the ambulances, and I had appendicitis. I laid all day long with appendicitis hurting. So they told me to die on the ambulance first. Me and them guys was in that tank that was hit. And we went back to Liège, Belgium, and I was operated on in a field hospital. And they asked me if I wanted to watch. Because they give me, that was the first time they came out with them EPOs, you know, where they could deaden half of your body. And then they wanted me to watch the other half. But
You were operated on for what?
appendicitis. And then they flew me back to Liège, and then from Liège they flew me back to England.
You forgot that was Battle of the Bulge.
When I got back to England, it was right at Christmas time. And during that time, when we was flying from Liège to there, the Battle of the Bulge started down here. And I was up there in a hospital in England when this Battle of the Bulge started. So that was right around Christmas time, or right before Christmas. And that let me escape the Battle of the Bulge. And we lost several men in that. So I was kind of tickled to death that I had appendicitis. But anyhow, when they released me up there, they was going to just release me and let me be assigned to some other outfit. So whenever I came back from London, they flew me back over, landed me here in France, and they said, stay and we'll assign you someplace. But what had been happening, everybody had been coming back over there like that. They take off AWOL and go back to their outfit. So that's what I did. I just started catching trucks and going back. And you know what? I ended up right exactly where I left my outfit. Exactly in the same spot. They had been to the bulge and then came back. And so that made me miss the Battle of the Bulge in 5 points getting out. But anyhow, then we took off from there. We went to Cologne, Germany. It's up in here, I think. And Dusseldorf. We crossed the Rhine River at Dusseldorf, I think it was. Is that up there, right up in here?
Dusseldorf.
Yeah, right there. That's where we crossed. And we crossed on pontoon boats. I mean, them 6x6 trucks, you know, loaded. And driving across on them old pontoon boats, they'd just rock. And the engineers had built that bridge. We got across there. Then we started getting into rich Germany. And that's where we found out them rich Germans, they hid everything under their,
Rain barrel. Rain barrel.
yeah, their rain barrels. In other words, every house would have rain barrels around it. And we got wise to it. You dig up that daggone rain barrel and there'd be all their valuables. And that's where I found that set of silverware
With Hitler's head on it.
with Hitler's head on every piece, yeah. And
Where did you get the rifle at, or the
pistol,
pistol?
I got it out of one of these foxholes. In Belgium, going through Belgium. We had a battle there, and I looked down in one of them foxholes, and there laid that dead German with the belt on. It even had the belt on it. So I took it off.
Tell about carrying that Hitler's picture, silverware around.
Yeah, I put it in a barracks bag, had it underneath the seat of the truck. I packed that thing and packed that thing for a month or more. And we got in a position one night in Germany, and they came out at 3 o'clock in the morning and said, move out, move out. Everybody jumps up out of bed and away we go. And I left that daggone silverware hanging in the attic of that house. I hid, you know, we was there for 30 days, so I was put everything away instead of hauling up the truck all the time. And when I did that, I ran off and left it. It was in a barracks bag in the attic of the house. And I've heard that there wasn't but 2 sets made. And I think one of them is in Washington, D.C. And I don't know if it's the one I had or... Chances are I'd have never got back with it. But I'd sure love to try. Then we kept it going. We got clear up to the Elbe River. You see the Elbe River up there?
Money boy threw it up there.
That's where we ended, up there. Right there, right on this side of the river. And we met with the Russians there. See, the Russians was on the other side. And in this town right there on the Elbe River, they had a warehouse of liquors and beers, and they shipped 14 boatloads of beer or liquors to Washington out of there. But we got about 14 truckloads, I think. And that's where we started celebrating. Right up there on the Elbe River. And
Tell about going into those.
oh yeah, them prison camps,
Yeah.
Buchenwald. We went by Buchenwald, I believe it was. Is it listed on here?
No.
Should be, before they cleaned it up. And what they had a whole bunch of ovens lined up side by side. And then they had a border around the top of the room with hangers on there like this,
Meat hooks.
meat hooks, and they just hang them up over their necks. And there they'd lay until they got ready to stick them in the ovens. And they was hanging there whenever we walked in there. And also,
Tattoos.
yeah, them tattoos. That woman that run the camp, her biggest thing was to cut the tattoos off
And
everybody.
make them lampshades.
Make them laugh. And they say they're in Washington, D.C. someplace.
They are.
But I don't believe they've ever opened them up, have they? I don't
Not
believe
to
they've
my
ever.
knowledge.
I don't believe they've ever showed them.
But she had a thing for them.
Yeah.
She would
What-
get them tattooed.
What was her?
Yeah.
Do you know her name? What was her name?
They might kept them in Germany too.
What was her name?
Well documented.
Put them in their museum.
No, I bet they
Hey.
came to Washington.
No, she had a thing for, she'd even started tattooing them, ones without tattoos.
Without tattoo.
That were just slated to go.
But I seen them. She had them. As you walk up a staircase, she'd have them on every staircase. And of course, the heads or nothing would be on there. It'd just be the skin with the tattoos on it. Slice it off. And but
Didn't that upset you?
not at that time I didn't.
Why?
Well, I could stand anything, yeah.
After the war?
Yeah, this was after the war when we went through Booking Wall, yeah.
Or during.
But no, it was during the war because they hadn't cleaned it up. See, they hadn't cleaned it up.
So why didn't it upset you? After all you've been through, you just learned to turn that emotion
Why,
off?
sure, hell, we was running our trucks over bodies.
And you ashes from the furnaces too.
Yeah, them ashes out of them places where they burnt them people.
So you just had to learn to turn that off to survive.
Yeah, yeah. I wouldn't be by myself. There'd be several of us. And you know how that is. Everybody ain't gonna sit down and cry. And there'd be jokes told and all that. But,
So how'd you celebrate?
telling jokes, playing cards. They'd give us cards, smoke cigarettes.
Tell about the medals they gave you. Why did you throw them back?
I didn't throw them back. I had to wait. I would have had to wait a couple extra days to have got them down there in Fort Jackson, South Carolina. And I wasn't about to stay 2 or 3 days for an old medal. I came home.
You want to tell them what you brought home?
No, better not.
You've already told us. That's been on another video.
Tell them what you brought home. The only thing you brought home.
My clothes.
Oh, you
Didn't
brought
have very
something
many of
else.
those.
Well, I had a lot of rubber
They're called condoms.
condoms.
Do you use them all?
I guess yeah, I used them all.
How you think you got here?
I'd run out by then.
So, yeah. Tell her how you got home. You had so many points. That
Yeah, they started out at 85 points, but I just had 78. And, but whenever it happened over there, the war in Japan was going on. So they shipped us back to England. Everybody with under 85 points, they shipped to England. And they was going to ship them back over to the United States, give you 45 days, then we was going to Japan. So when we was over in England, getting ready to board the Queen Mary. They dropped that first atomic bomb in Japan. Then on our way home, before we got to America, they dropped another one. Boy, that sounded good, see? So we got home, they told us to go home for 45 days. Well, we went home, and I was home 45 days, then they gave me a telegram to stay 12 more. And then the next telegram, I was in the point thing, so they said go to Fort Jackson, South Carolina and get a discharge. That's how I got out of the service. And
Were you in Indiana at the time when they?
mhm.
How were you supposed to get to South Carolina?
Well, see, they sent you to the camp where your division originated for discharge. And see, the 30th Division originated in South Carolina, Fort Jackson. So, when they got ready to discharge us, we had to go to Fort Jackson to get discharged. And that's where all of our records were.
And how'd you get there?
Went by bus? No. Yeah, I went by bus.
You didn't hitchhike then?
Mm-mm. No, that was another time when me and old, what's your name, come home from Oberfeld. Holder. But, no, they gave us a bus ticket to go both directions. But I don't know. That's what happened there is, then I got discharged, and then that's whenever they would have give you your medals. But they said, now you're going to have to stay here 2 more days to get them. Or otherwise, we'll just put them on your paper. Put them on the paper.
And then when you applied for them, they said they were burned.
Yeah, my records got burnt in Kansas City. And in the Kansas City fire. Oh, I could have got them, but
Huh?
they wouldn't have been no good.
Did you pick that up?
I think so.
So,
You hear what he said? He said they wouldn't have been any good.
well, I got a few in there. France gave us 2 or 3.
Yeah. You forgot to tell him you got married when you in between there.
Yeah, that's when we got married, when I came home for discharge. Now when I came home from discharge, we was going to get married before I went to Japan. And I turned in her on my pay. And they even took the pay out of me, you know, to pay her. And then they kept the money.
They never did pay.
I never did.